What's up guys, my name is Bart Komar and today I'm going to show you guys how I built this farm style fence with a welded wire on it that you can pick up at any hardware store to keep our critters in and others out. I'm going to show you how to lay out a fence properly so you have nice straight lines, how to set posts, and we're going to build a couple of gates. Let's get started. Welcome to the Komar Project. All right, before I start, I gotta cut down a couple of little trees that are in my way. And sometimes I might have to do it too, so let's do it.
So building a fence is not complicated. It's a little labor intensive, but quite easy. And to start off, I'm clearing out an area so that the layout can be a little bit easier. I start off by marking where my first post is going to be with some spray paint and pounding in a stake with a screw in the side of it. And that is to help to tie the string off to it. Then I stretch the string to my next point, which is an existing fence that was built by the previous owners, and then I sprayed the ground following the string. It doesn't have to be perfect here as long as you are in line. We're going to talk about stringing and getting it just right in more detail right before we set the posts. I mark the post locations every 8 feet and where the gates are going to be so I don't forget them. Now fence posts should be 1/3 to a half of the height of your fence. So a 6-foot fence can be as shallow as 24 inches, but you also have to take into consideration your location. The colder the climate, the deeper the hole. So for me in the Midwest, I need to go 42 inches deep, and hand digging that deep is not an option for me. So I ran out to my local tool rental store and got the biggest auger I can find. And let me tell you, this was a beast.
Check this out. So on the first turn, I didn't even get like an inch in. The pin that was holding this head in here completely severed from where it's holding it right there. That's crazy. All right, let's see if we have another one of these pins.
After putting a band-aid on this auger, I was able to get it running and drill all of my holes. Now I know it looks big and a bit overkill, but every time I used this small one-man auger, it almost broke my back. So this time I thought I would go big, and I'm really glad I did. If you've never dug holes by hand or used a small auger on anything more than 2 holes at a time, it's hard to explain how physically demanding it can be. But take my word for it, it is. So I was more than happy to pay the extra $30 a day for a larger machine that made my life a little bit easier. It's still not butter, but it's butter.
Even with this big machine, it's still hard work. Holy crap.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 holes dug. Another 8.
Nice hole, gotta make it good.
I filled each hole with 3 to 4 inches of gravel to help with the drainage, and I started staking my lines for the posts. Now, you don't want to have your string line right in the middle of where your hole is, because that's where the post is going to go. You want to offset it a bit, so when you place your post in the middle of the hole, one side of it is going to be touching your string line. And sometimes you may have a hole that's not in line with all the others for whatever reason. No need to redo everything, just widen that hole enough so you can actually get your post set in line with all the others. Every time I've put in a fence or a deck, there's always been that one hole that's been offset. No need to stress, just use a shovel, dig it out a little bit further, and you're back in business. Now, a post level on a fence installation is indispensable.
No!
This little 90-degree level is going to have bubbles on both sides of it, allowing you to plumb the posts in both directions. I set the post on a gravel base and got a preliminary plumb direction on both sides. After getting the bottom of it set, I drove in stakes 3 to 4 feet away from the post and attached a 2x3 with a couple of screws to get my first plumb direction. You want to attach it to the stake first. That way you can move the post left or right wherever you need it to be plumb, and then drive the screw. Next, I do the same thing but 90 degrees from the first stake. And at this point, when the second brace is secured, you should be nice and sturdy, enough to start pouring the concrete.
Before you actually start pouring the concrete, you want to double check, make sure nothing has moved. Perfect right there.
There's a lot of concrete mixtures out there, and most of them are going to work on post holes, but I typically go with high strength Quikrete or their fast setting concrete for posts. It's fairly inexpensive at $3 a bag and hasn't failed me yet. Some people will actually dump the entire bag into the hole and just add water. Yes, it works, and I've done it before myself, but to ensure an even mixture, I strongly recommend pre-mixing it a little runny, kind of like clam chowder. That way it flows evenly all around the post and you don't have to worry about it for years to come.
All right, now that the concrete has had a chance to cure, we can actually take the forms off and cut all of our posts to size. And to do that, we're gonna use a story stick. This is a story stick. Any piece of wood that you cut down to whatever size you need, that when you place it up against something, no matter if the ground is higher or lower, it's always gonna give you the same dimension. And it's quicker than pulling out your tape measure and doing all that. So we're gonna mark it with this, then come through with our square, mark all the way around it, and cut them. Let's do it.
After cutting the post to size, it's time to install the welded wire fence to keep my furry friends safe in the backyard. I went with a 2x4 14 gauge mesh, so it's small enough to keep the critters out, but big enough so it doesn't take away from that wood fence look that I love so much. I uncoiled it around the post and used a stapler with galvanized staples to secure it temporarily, or if you have a staple gun, that works great too.
All right, so now we have our wire on, we have our posts in. It's time to actually put some wood on top of this thing and make it look like a fence. And I got some amazing ash that I picked up. It's still in raw form, so I just need to rip it down to size and then we can put it on. So let's go do that.
I wanted this fence to be a traditional farm style design with traditional materials in its construction. And after doing some research, I learned that farm style fences or horse pasture fences were built from mostly hardwoods like oak, ash, and even poplar. And I was lucky enough to find somebody online that was selling a lot of ash, and I mean a lot, for a very reasonable price. It was rough sawn, which is what I was looking for, and the only thing I had to do was rip it to size, which in my case was 5.5 inches. Now I know deals like that don't come around that often, so treated lumber works perfectly fine. A 1x6 or a 2x6 is going to look great, and it's probably going to last longer than this untreated ash that I'm using. To secure the horizontal braces, I used two 2x4s that were 14 inches long. I placed them on the ground and placed the first brace on top of it. I secured it using some 2.5-inch screws, took that 2x4 from underneath it, placed it on top of that first rail, clamped it, and secured the second rail. And then I just repeated the same process for the top rail. The screws that I'm using are half-threaded T25 washer head screws, which will act kind of like a bolt almost, pulling the board nice and tight against the post.
We got a fence. Oh, happy days.
With the fence mostly done, I moved into the shop and started working on the gates. Now, gates are not difficult to build as long as you can make repeatable cuts, and the easiest way I found to do this is with a stop block. I have one that's integrated into my miter station, but you can always screw down a block of wood and use it to get the same dimension every single time. The plan here is to sandwich the welded wire between two pieces of wood, creating a gate. And to do this, I need to build one solid side of the gate first with half laps. I started off on the table saw using a dado plate, but found that was a little bit awkward with longer pieces. So I moved over to the bandsaw and made quick work of it.
Made them both the same way.
When I say I made them the same way, I mean that the angled cross braces on both gates were parallel to each other instead of coming to a point. No big deal, I just unscrewed it from the gate, flipped it to the other side, and secured it back onto the gate off camera, and we were ready to start installing. After mounting the hinges, I plumbed one gate with the post, clamped it into place, and used inflatable shims to get everything nice and level. I've used these shims on just about everything, from installing doors, leveling countertops, cabinets, and even ripping apart my assembly table. Pretty much they're indispensable in my toolbox. Definitely link in the description. After mounting the hardware onto these double gates, I can move on to my final gate, which is a man gate that is going to be attached to the side of the house. And since I'm mounting to brick, I'm going to be using some concrete anchors that open up when you tighten the nut onto it. You just want to make sure that you don't over tighten it, because if you crank too much force onto it, you can actually break your brick or pull it out of the brick, and that's going to make for a pretty bad day, and nobody wants to go through that. So just tighten it, hand tight, and you should be good to go.
So that's it, guys. The fence is done, and just in time, because the cold weather is rolling in and Christmas is finally here. So we're very excited to have our property all fenced in. That way our animals can roam free and just enjoy the space. And we get to still retain that country feel that we love about this neighborhood. One of the reasons why we moved here is because it's an equestrian park. There's horses down the street, and all of the fences here are farm style, which gives this suburban area kind of a farm feel or a country feel, which we absolutely love. I tried to explain the process of building this fence to you guys as best as I can. Sometimes I have a hard time with words, but if you have any questions, let me know in the comments section below. I try to answer every question as best as I can. And if you're new to the channel, consider subscribing, hitting that bell notification so you don't miss upcoming videos. Thank you so much for joining me on this experience. I'll see you guys next time. Gotcha. Seriously? Thor, come on. Thor, come on. Oh.